confirmation and got it. Now here's the key piece. They already knew. Where by the time he called Cheney's office, they were well aware that this had actually occurred. Now, as kind of an aside on this, the media was asking on Monday when they finally got really going, because they all showed up back at work. They really hate coming in on Sundays, and they won't generally do any work. But on Monday, they're ready to go. Cheney spokesman Leanne McBride was asked at a press conference on Monday whether or not the office had planned to inform the media had the media not contacted them first. McBride didn't answer the question. Now, this actually got an article of itself. The media went off implying that basically Cheney's office had intended to cover up the incident completely. Now, despite the fact that you could certainly argue that cover-ups are an MO of the Bush administration, in my personal opinion, there's no way that Cheney's office ever intended to cover this thing up. I mean, for one thing, Cheney is a crack marksman. If he'd actually been trying to kill Whittington, he'd be dead. You sure as hell wouldn't be using shot either to do it. The real culprit in this entire thing about where the delay actually occurred was that protocols don't exist for what happens when the vice president shoots a guy. The last time it happened was right here. 200 years ago, Aaron Burr and Alexander Hamilton had a duel. Burr killed Hamilton. And it hasn't actually happened yet. Now, administrations do know what to do when somebody shoots an administration official, because up until recently, it's happened every 20 years like clockwork since 1840. The sitting president has died that's been elected. They called it the, what was the name of the curse? It was an Indian curse. Supposedly in India they put a curse on. What was that? Yeah, Tecumseh's curse? Yeah, I can't remember the name of it. But essentially, every 20 years the sitting president has died in office. We still got 3 years to go. So the jury's not out on this one. The only guy that ever survived it was Reagan, which has an interesting little, there's an interesting segue to that coming later on here. But essentially, they do know what to do when that happens. There's protocols, people get contacted, things go into motion. Nobody knows what the hell to do when an administration official shoots somebody else. Hasn't happened. Double checking. I got confused myself on the notes here. The interesting thing about this was the fact that while you could, like I said, you could say that the MO of the Bush administration was cover-ups. The thing about it is that this was not really the issue to go after Cheney on, in my opinion, and in fact, in a lot of people's opinions. There were a bunch of bloggers that came out wondering aloud whether or not the media would have pursued the Valerie Plame leak with the same dogged determination. What would have actually occurred? We may end up still seeing how that goes, but I actually don't have my hopes up for that. So here's what happens in the media cycle. So you've got basically something that's occurred. You have no more information about it. But you do know that it's an ongoing story because questions have not been answered. So what do? You got to pad the story. You don't make stuff up, but you basically enunciate, you basically accentuate facts that really aren't that big a deal. Case in point. Monday, February 13th, the media's big deal was that they had found out that Cheney and Whittington, while they'd been hunting, had failed to get a $7 hunting license stamp, which allowed you to shoot upland game birds. If you were in Texas and you just get a hunting license, apparently you were not allowed to shoot upland game birds without a $7 stamp. That was the entire article. That was it. Cheney, that cheap bastard, had purchased his $125 hunting license but had not paid $7. Oh, the horror. Now, that being said, while this is pretty much a non-story, at the same time, there's kind of a story. I don't know how many people in here hunt or fish, but anybody who's had any experience with the Wildlife Game Office knows that if you or I were out hunting without a $7 stamp, they'd throw the book at us. It'd be whatever the highest fine was. However, to that extent, I don't think that the fine for that was all that high, and the reason I don't think so is because nobody mentioned it in any of the articles, and there were plenty written about the fact that Cheney had not had his $7 stamp. Big deal. Except that if there was a fine that was significant, they would have mentioned it somewhere in the article. If it had been, a bazillion years of jail time or something like that, then it would have shown up, but no, didn't appear anywhere. Next mitigating factor, on Tuesday, that poor bastard Whittington had a heart attack in the hospital. Potentially related to the fact that he was shot. Out came the word processors. They put 2 or 3 articles about Whittington had a heart attack in the hospital, copied and pasted the entire article on the back, and went out for a smoke break and probably never came back for the rest of the day. That's how that ended up working out. Next mitigating factor, beer. Cheney admitted to somebody at some point on Tuesday that they had A beer. Just one beer. Stop the presses. A beer. Now, never mind the fact that the whole point to hunting is beer. I don't know if you've ever been hunting, but hunting is like fishing, and fishing is like golf. And if you've never been golfing, what these activities all have in common is they are really, really boring. So you bring beer, or to basically keep your interest going, and beer is basically the entire point. But here's the thing. Cheney said he had just one beer. Now, I don't know how many of you guys have friends that are cops, but if you do, and you ask them how it's gone whenever they pulled somebody over and ask them how much they've had to drink, everybody always has just one beer. To which point then they give them a breathalyzer and they blow like a .50. Straight up. Just one beer is basically Code Langer saying we were smashed out of our skulls. I think that's exactly what happened with Cheney. But here's the thing. It's not illegal to drink and shoot. I mean, it's not a good idea. But it's not illegal. And mainstream media loves to jump up and down about this stuff. But oh my God, Cheney had a beer. Oh my God. It isn't necessarily even the fact that Cheney had a beer, but they tried to do, you'll see this most often on local news where they'll do these exposés on college kids drinking, where they'll follow these college kids around and they'll go into a bar and they'll drink. Oh my God. Does this actually surprise anybody anymore? The media thinks it does, and so they run these articles. In fact, it got silly to the point where recently this year, they followed a Minneapolis hockey team around. And it only took about 15 minutes before they went in a bar and got stinking drunk. And they had, Fox News team had these hidden cameras where they actually taped hockey players drinking. Go figure. The best part about it was when they had the coach who issued a press release that basically said, follow any college student around for 2 weeks, there's nothing on this planet you won't be able to film them doing. And it's absolutely true. The other thing that ended up in the media as a result of this, it wasn't really necessarily a mitigating factor, but it was a side effect, is that for that week, any poor bastard that shot another guy, front page news. Including one guy that shot a guy while talking about how stupid it was that Cheney had shot a guy. Like literally in the process of describing what had happened, he shot his buddy. My personal favorite was an accidental shooting, and I put this in quotes because I got to wonder about it. He was shot by his girlfriend. Okay, now that's a little suspicious right there, just in and of itself. But it gets better. She was 17, he was 21. All right, now the ick factor already is engaged at this point. And apparently they were tracking a possum around their car, and he was on one side and she was on the other. And their story is that basically she had the gun on the other side of the car, and he leaned over like this to see if the possum was down there, and she saw his head and shot. That was the story. Personally, I think that, it's one of those things where that can't possibly be a good relationship anyways, and it probably is just one thing leading to another. One of the other things that happened that week, and I suspect this was an accident, but I don't know for sure, but it was just too weird to be anything other than a coincidence. But there was an article that came out the exact same week on how to properly bury someone in your backyard. I swear to God. Now, this article was about bird flu. Why they decided to run up the poll that week, I have no idea. That's one of those articles that was probably what they call in the hopper, which means the media will store these articles about just stuff, hoping that at some point it'll become relevant. A good example is if you ever watched local news when they start talking about the obesity epidemic for whatever reason, look at this canned footage of fat people walking around the streets. It's like that's just like sitting around in some vault somewhere. They've got this ready to roll out at the moment in case somebody might start talking about fat people. Well, I suspect this article was written a long time ago and probably completely unrelated came out. One of the Farkers that read that article about how to properly bury somebody in your backyard had an excellent point. Said, shouldn't this article have been about how to build a funeral pyre in your backyard? Because one of the little gems of information was if you have to bury somebody in your backyard, don't bury them near the septic system. Well done. I mean, come on. You don't have to go too far to figure that one out. Media rules. I'm working on a book right now about rules in the media, and they're not what you would expect. One of the rules is press releases masquerading as actual articles. When the media has nothing to go to, they will start running these things up the flagpole as actual news. One of the articles that came out that week was an article by PETA. PETA ran a press release. The media just went ahead and just took it verbatim and ran it out there, denouncing the fact that Cheney was hunting, period. And said, quote, put your guns down and pick up a tennis racket, Mr. Cheney. Copy, paste, print, smoke break, bar. That's how that went. Second article that came out that week, which is a press release, was from Sarah and James Brady. And I actually have the entire text of it because it's just so astounding to me this actually made news. Okay, here's the entire article, okay? And I quote, it starts right here. "Now I understand why Dick Cheney keeps asking me to go hunting with him," said Jim Brady. "I had a friend once who accidentally shot pellets into his dog, and I thought he was an idiot." And then another quote, "I thought Cheney was scary for a long time," Sarah Brady said. "Now I know I was right to be nervous." That was the entire article. That's it. Ran right out there. End of article. What the hell? Your feelings about Sarah James Brady aside, in politics aside, how the hell was that even news? The fact that they ran this up the flagpole. I have no idea. I lost about as much respect for the Bradys when this happened as I did when I saw Jesse Jackson leaping to the defense of Terrell Owens over racism allegations. You guys remember Terrell Owens, the guy, well, he's playing for Dallas now. He got signed up in Dallas. T.O.? Yeah, T.O., yeah. He was claiming this $15 million crybaby was complaining that the reason he was getting media attention was because of racism, and Jesse Jackson was there. He's ready to jump in. Something's wrong with that guy. Cheney ended this entire affair, at least for his involvement, on February 15th, which was a Wednesday, by finally doing a press conference. But he didn't do a press conference as much as he actually went to Fox News and was interviewed with softball questions for about 2 hours. Now, everybody was up in arms over this, but here's the thing. What really could have come from having an open press conference about this? Okay, the guy actually shot somebody. And that's basically it. Now, the media, however, was loving. They wanted to get him out there and just drag him through the muck. And now, like I'm saying, I'm not saying Cheney's not an asshole. He probably is an asshole. I don't think you can become vice president without being an asshole. But it wasn't the time or the place to nail a guy over, anything else he might have been doing. If the media really wanted to jump on it, don't wait until he shoots a guy accidentally. Maybe ask some direct questions during a press conference. How about that, guys? Give that a shot. See what happens. Honestly, I think Cheney was probably really upset. It was a good thing that nobody asked him any questions. I mean, for one thing, Whittington was $1 million earner for the Republican Party. I mean, he might have killed that guy. Interesting postscript of the entire event was that when Whittington got out of the hospital, he apologized for getting shot. Not sure exactly how that would have been his fault. Next media rule, has the media gone too far? This is how you know that the news cycle is about to end, when they ask, has the media gone too far? This, by the way, is an actual Time magazine cover. And they trot this out every single time because once they have nobody else to interview and nothing else to talk about, they like to talk to themselves because it's a lot easier than actually doing work. And because they're all sitting around. The most amusing bit I saw on this it was actually a CNN show. I saw it in an airport, just caught the end of it. CNN's got some kind of a show they air on Sundays, and I don't know what it is, but there's a live audience involved in it of about 50 to 100 people there. And they basically, for whatever reason, they go and ask these people what they think, which my buddy Brooks, who runs Sports by Brooks, does a lot of radio, and he says that that's actually the worst radio you can do. So the minute you say, let's go to the phones, you're pretty much talking to crackpots and nothing but. In this particular case, CNN is a little show. They are inviting people that are out walking around, usually tourists, and so they're probably there for whatever reason. So they're not necessarily crackpots, but it was interesting that without exception on the subject of the Cheney thing, every single person expressed emotions ranging from mystification as to why this was in the news to disgust that it was in the news. Because who cared? And it basically came down to the same conclusion. They're like, there are any more important questions that need to be asked to Cheney other than, how did you shoot this guy? It just isn't that important. Best wrap-up I saw was a follow-up about a day later. It was an entire article coming out of Florida. They're always good for the best stuff. It was basically Governor Jeb Bush was appearing at the Florida State Fair for a luncheon, and somebody had given him a bright orange sticker to wear out there. And it was like, I guess it was the guys from lobbying group that was doing the event in the first place. And the sticker said, "No farmers, no food." Now that's a great concept right there. Because where the hell else are you going to get the food from? I don't even know why you have to bunch in the first place. But anyway, he said that his first thing he said, his opening remarks was, he said, "I'm a little concerned that Dick Cheney is going to walk in right now." That was it. That was actually the entire article. It took me longer to explain it than it would have taken you to read it. That's how ridiculous this thing got as far as that goes. And hey, speaking of ridiculous, let's go back to this. The most outrageous part about this controversy was actually about boobs. It's a part of the female breast. It's about this big. You guys may be aware. The women in the room will know exactly what I'm talking about. The men in the room, you may have noticed we have these things too. Not as exciting on us, obviously. But given the fact that any broadcast TV audience sees these things, basically half of them see it on a daily basis. And you can expose on broadcast TV basically every other part of the breast except for a piece of skin this big. And you can actually show women taking their shirts off as long as they're not looking that direction. You can also put nipple pokies in your bras So basically we're talking about you can actually have nipples that are not flesh colored, something that Jennifer Aniston used to do